Here we go. Let's get into this. So this is Meredith Whittaker, the lady in black, and I'm going to shut this thing down. Just move it over here. And she's being interviewed. Let's hear what she has to say. And by the way, whoever sent this to me might have been Officer Dino. Somebody on IG sent it to me, and thank you so much. I missed this one, and this one's extremely important. All right, here we go.
Any one of the operating system vendors that decides to implement an agent with these capacities is ultimately hollowing out the ability for Signal and others to guarantee privacy or data protection at the application layer. And this is a quiet but profound shift that we are witnessing.
Can you fight it?
Oh, I mean, I don't believe in inevitability, and I am willing to fight on my principles. I don't know if I can win it, but I will do everything I can because I think this is fundamental. I am concerned that we are seeing extremely hasty decisions made by very powerful actors. We have 3 companies in the world with control over our core operating systems. That's Google
4, really,
with Android, Microsoft with Windows, and Apple with iOS, macOS.
And Linux Foundation with Linux.
Are relying on one or another of those. And they can make decisions by fiat that fundamentally harm our collective cybersecurity, that take away
she's right.
any choice we might have for privacy. What is the advice? I think healthy skepticism and a recognition that this technology is not magic. It can be extremely useful. It can have profound applications, particularly where finding patterns in large amounts of data is useful for XYZ. But it runs on hardware. It runs on software. When we talk about AI, we're not talking about a magical sky god that can suddenly solve all our problems, answer all our questions. We are talking about a statistical model that is then embedded in a hardware software system using software libraries, implementing choices on the user interface level that are made by people that are susceptible to vulnerabilities. These are not your friends. These are not conscious beings. These are not sentient interlocutors.
They are not.
Any one of the operating system vendors that decides to implement an agent with these capacities is ultimately hollowing out the ability for Signal and others to guarantee privacy.
Yes. Okay. So that might have been a lot to unpack. I'd like to maybe essentially rewind this and kind of explain what she's talking about here in sort of Goju speak, in case people weren't maybe connecting all the dots or understand how this affects the forward landscape of technology as it will likely be developed, as well as all of our privacy. Because I think she's 100% right in that there are 3 major companies that we're likely all interfacing with for our phones, our tablets, our computers, and those operating systems are the base level of everything. Now, there is a layer below that. That's the hypervisor layer, but we can kind of ignore that for the time being. The operating system is essentially the ultimate authority for how all the software on that system will be run. And those 3 companies that run those operating systems, that they essentially have 100% control over. 100% control over, guys. Super important to understand this. They answer to no one, essentially. It's completely... We are completely beholden to their will. And there are concrete data points that we've been talking about on GTT, where I've been calling them out on things that they've been doing, specifically with AI, but I hadn't been focusing on the danger that it presents in terms of privacy, which is Meredith's area. But the three companies, Microsoft with Windows, Google with Android, and Apple with macOS and iOS. That basically covers the gamut. Now, you still do have Linux, and with Linux, that's a separate space that our future may be Linux. And I think this actually reinforces many of the things we've been talking about on how important open source is, how critically important it is, and the trust that we get from people that are building open source and how it's community driven. And while the Linux Foundation still has full control over Linux, we also have control. And the reason why we also have control is that we can fork it. That if Linus and LF start going sideways, we can say, okay, well, we trusted you guys, but you're kind of moving in a direction that we don't love. And so I'm just going to fork this thing and I'll do it myself. That's the beauty of open source, is the trust is implicit and it can be reclaimed at any point. You don't have those types of guarantees with companies that fully control the source of those operating systems. And historically, this hasn't really been, well, okay, it has been an issue. There's definitely the operating system wars and the browser wars and all this stuff, but I don't think it's been an issue at the scale that it's starting to become an issue. And principally, I think that that has to do with the fact that AI is here. So when we start to consider the landscape of AI, there are some fundamental changes that are happening that we've already actually even talked about on GTT. Two of those things are the forced integration of Microsoft's Copilot system, as well as their recall system, which, if you're not aware, at one point, recall was taking something like a full screenshot of your OS and everything you had on your screen maybe once a minute. And then it was doing image analysis on that, describing all the details that are on your screen in a text file. And it had stored that text file in plain text. It wasn't even encrypted at even the most primitive level. You could literally just read it. So if somebody had hacked your system while recall is active, all they would need to do is find the directory where recall lives and then pull all of the text files. They don't need the image files because they've already done their job. They could then pull all these text files and you're owned in a major way. How are you owned? Well, when you visited Wells Fargo and you have your account number and your financial balance and all that stuff on your screen, guess what? Recall was taking a picture of that, and Recall transcribed that into a plain text file. How Microsoft didn't even consider the dangers of this are mind-boggling to me. I mean, clearly they didn't, because it was, again, stored in a plain text file. Now, I believe that Microsoft has rolled back Recall because there was such a public outrage about it. I mean, I was furious. The level of stupidity on Microsoft to do something that is this laissez-faire with all of our private information without any concern about the catastrophic consequences it could have. Not necessarily that Microsoft was doing anything bad with it. It doesn't matter what Microsoft is doing. What matters is that there's bad actors, and you can't leave super important private data unencrypted when it's at rest. Any security person that's worth their, weight in gold, or whatever the saying is, knows this. We all know this, right? So that's the first major misstep that shows you that the operating system companies, at least Microsoft, cannot be trusted to use AI in a way that is going to be reasonable and rational with our privacy. And I'm just talking about this one thing. It could probably go much, much deeper than just your financial accounts. I mean, we can daydream all day about the kind of craziness that it could do. Also, Copilot and Recall were installed in a completely invisible way. There was no opt-in. Everybody was opted in. I literally just uninstalled Copilot today because I realized, for this new machine, I hadn't uninstalled it. And yet there it is. It's just doing whatever it's doing. And I never asked for this. Now we can switch over to Google. What did Google do recently? The forced SLM download of Gemini Nano in a completely invisible, also no opt-in way. And then they basically disabled opt-out such that even if you deleted the downloaded SLM, which is pulled in automatically, being run automatically, doing who knows what, if you went in and you deleted it, and this again requires a huge amount of knowledge to even know that this is happening. I suspect most people had no idea that Google was doing this, nor should they have to need to, right? If you're using Chrome, none of us signed up for an AI silent download. I don't remember signing that. And imagine all the people that aren't experts in technology like we are, like your parents or your brother and sister or your friends, that they just use their phone because they want to do phone-related stuff. They don't have a PhD in computer science, and they sit around and think about all this stuff deeply like we do every day. That's not their responsibility. They want to be able to use the device that they bought with their money and use it in a way that they want to use it without the fear that the software that's on it that we supposedly use and trust because these guys are supposedly trustworthy are actually not trustworthy at all, and they're doing stuff that is unaligned with what's beneficial to us. Moreover, we also have knowledge now that, like this came out recently, that OpenAI minimally was selling user data to at least Facebook, Meta, and Google. We can fact check this in a second and make sure that that's right, but I saw this in some of my travels. That also demonstrates that the big AI vendors are doing exactly the things that we thought maybe they were doing, but now it's sort of gone on record. And it's not just that. Think about this for a second. These types of deals are bidirectional. There are two parties that are involved in any of these things. It's not just that OpenAI is willing to sell this data. It's also that Meta and Google are willing to buy this data. That should freak us out a little bit. It freaks me out because it basically says that everybody's going to be fine with this corruption. Like, yep, okay. Like that, I don't think that should be legal. This reminds me of the Cambridge Analytics situation that happened several years ago where I think Meta, what did they do? They hired Cambridge Analytics to do something, and then they went around and sold all this data, and it resulted in this massive class action lawsuit that didn't go very well for Meta. Let's see if I can look this up. Cambridge Analytics or Analytica scandal, Meta. I'm going to move this guy over here now and this guy here. Let's take a look at this. What was this? So in the 2010s, personal data belonging to millions of Facebook users was collected by British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica for political advertising without informed consent. The data was collected through an app called This Is Your Digital Life, developed by data scientist Alexander Krogan and his company Global Science Research, 2013. The app consisted of a series of questions to build psychological profiles on users and collected the personal data of the user's Facebook friends via Facebook Open Graph platform. The app harvested data of up to 87 million Facebook profiles. 87 million people. Cambridge Analytica used the data to analytically assist the 2016 presidential campaigns of Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Cambridge Analytica was also widely accused of interfering with the Brexit referendum, although the official investigation recognized that the company was not involved beyond some initial inquiries and that no significant breaches took place. In the interviews with The Guardian and The New York Times, information about data misuse was disclosed 2018. In response, Facebook apologized for their role in the data harvesting, and their CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, testified in April 10th, 2018 in front of Congress. In July 2019, it was announced that Facebook was to be fined $5 billion by the Federal Trade Commission due to its privacy violations. Now, here's the kicker, is this thing that we're talking about here, this is a thing that is going to be running on all of our machines. This is not going to be a isolated incident that requires effort from these third parties where you're handing over the data and then they're doing bad things. This is running right now on many people's machines, and it is likely harvesting our data as we speak. Up until I uninstalled Copilot just earlier this afternoon, who knows what it was harvesting on my machine. Now, keep in mind, this has nothing to do with using AI. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is that these AIs are sitting privately on your machine, studying your interaction. Like, this is well understood if you start to go down these security rabbit holes where things like the mic on your phone is constantly on, right? And you'll notice these really strange things where you happen to be having a conversation with your friend about, you know, this trip that you took to Italy and, oh, it wasn't amazing. And then suddenly you start getting ads on vacations to Italy. Like, what? How did it know? I love Italy. It's like perfectly in lockstep, right? That's kindergarten technology to this. This is sort of the all-knowing, all-thinking. It can handle information in sort of every different format that it's provided. Textual information, visual information, audio information, analysis of your movements, your geolocation, right? All of these things. This would require a huge amount of work to build a system like this. And once it was found out that this was being done, it would probably be shut down immediately. But because AI has tremendous value, you can very easily manipulate the AIs to do these things that are super, super dangerous, super unethical. And so it's far easier to get these type of surveillance infiltration systems integrated into all of our devices because they do have value. They have significant value. Whereas things like this Cambridge Analytica stuff, you find out this is going on. The whole purpose of this was essentially for data misuse and privacy violation. That's not what these AIs are. That's not principally why we're using these AIs. So now you have this very interesting thing emerging is You have the AI companies that are making it super clear that they don't necessarily have ethics and are willing to do whatever they want to make money, including selling your information. You have companies that we supposedly trusted that are willing to buy that data, which I think that's a class action lawsuit just waiting to happen. And then on top of that, now when you consider that all of the major operating system companies all have world-class AIs that they've built, and they're openly integrating these things into those operating systems, we are bordering on a very dangerous space here that's not like anything we've seen before. And as Meredith was saying, I want to have us watch that video one more time. As Meredith was saying, this is a very quiet thing that's happening, because as we were talking about, like when Claude Code source was leaked, I was mentioning, I think that this thing, AI takeover, is going to start happening. And a lot of people like basically got real angry that I said this and said I was fear mongering and I was clickbaiting or whatever. And then a month later, we're seeing there's massive AI takeover events happening all over the place, basically exactly as we discussed. Now that we're aware that this is going on, and keep in mind, this, I don't ever take pleasure in reporting these types of things. I didn't even think about this as a true possibility until I saw Meredith talk about it, and she's nailing it. She's hitting the nail on the head here, that this is something that, given the climate of technology today and all the lack of ethics, the corruption that we're seeing openly with these companies, what would stop them from doing this? And I think in some sense, we already know the answer. Nothing. I've seen nothing that suggests that they will not do this, because they already have started to do this with the forced installation of things like Copilot and the Gemini Nano SLM. We don't know what they're actually using those things for, and it's being forced on us whether we want to or not. So if we jump to the end now, I think that the bigger question that we have is, what alternatives do we have in terms of operating systems that we can likely trust? And what's the game plan that we need to put together so that when this happens, if it hasn't happened already, we can migrate to these other systems and have a software stack that functions in a way that is trustworthy? Specifically, not just the operating system, but also the AI technology. Because I got to tell you, I don't trust any of the AI companies today. And the only reason why I'm using Claude is I haven't yet had time to build out the full AI stack that I want to build out for SLMs. But the moment that that's built, I'll be switching over to that thing entirely. That basically, I'm just using Claude to accelerate my ability to build this damn thing. And then once that's done, Claude is gone. And Claude's going to be gone for good, as well as all the other AI systems, because I 100% do not trust them. So with all that said, and that's sort of the context that I have about this situation and why I think it's so dire, I think we should watch this again and see that this is what, at least the way I interpret it, what Meredith is talking about, is we're about ready to enter this extremely murky territory where far too much power is being given to companies that have demonstrated they are not behaving ethically, and that we can't trust them in the way that we've trusted them in the past. They simply have too much power at this point, and through concrete evidence, they've demonstrated to us that they can't be trusted with that power.
Or data protection at the application layer. And this is a quiet but profound shift that we are witnessing.
Can you fight it?
Oh, I mean, I don't believe in inevitability, and I am willing to fight on my principles. I don't know if I can win it, but I will do everything I can because I think this is fundamental. I am concerned that we are seeing extremely hasty decisions made by very powerful actors. We have 3 companies in the world with control over our core operating systems. That's Google with Android, Microsoft with Windows, and Apple with iOS, macOS. We all are relying on one or another of those, and they can make decisions by fiat that fundamentally harm our collective cybersecurity, that take away any choice we might have for privacy. What is the advice? I think healthy skepticism and a recognition that this technology is not magic. It can be extremely useful.
Right. Just to jump in here, I think this is maybe the most important thing to understand, at least from my perspective. AI by itself is not evil. It's just a technology. It's not this magical sky god that can do all and be all. And what's really refreshing about this is it demonstrates to us that we have the capability of building these AIs ourselves. We don't need big tech to build them. SLMs are the concrete evidence of that. Prior to SLMs, for sure, we can't build it. Unless you guys have $100 million hanging. I mean, I could build it, but I'm going to need $100 million to train the damn thing. And then I'm going to need perpetual money to run the data center that is going to require all the power and compute to do this. So that's just a non-starter. But given the emergence of SLMs, and also fundamentally why I created Diff, is to shift from this cloud-centric, big tech controlled space, that it gives us the opportunity to level the playing field, and we can build these things. You've heard me many times say that this is the new open source. And GTT, my aim with GTT is it's not a social media thingamabob. It's a movement to try to create a group of technical experts where we can collectively work toward becoming the next Linux Foundation, except our focus won't be on operating systems. It will be building the AI stack, the open source AI stack that we can build. We can build it. Linus Torvalds demonstrated that if they can build an operating system, we can build this AI stack, and we can do it in a completely open source way. That, I think, is essentially the future that we have to embrace. We have to realize that that's the only way that puts us back in the driver's seat and keeps this from running away from us. Because what that does, minimally, is it forces them to be honest, that they will know people have an alternative. We're not going to be beholden to them. And the moment that that alternative exists, it forces them to play nice. Many of you may not remember the days before Linux existed, but I do. And back in those days, Microsoft's reign was supreme. And they fought open source and the emergence of Linux tooth and nail. They did everything they could to shut it down. They would market against it. They would actively try to find ways to put them out of business. They would try to steer sentiment away from open source. They would run these ads about how open source is the worst thing ever and you don't want this. And it was all make-believe, pretend, just because they could see as clearly as those of us that were in the space at the time that if Linux actually became a thing and became real, Microsoft would no longer have supreme control over operating systems, and that would force them to behave in a way that they behave now. But right now, that doesn't exist for AI, which is part of the reason why we have these crazy, unethical, corrupt decisions being made. There's no one there to check them. And I'm going to make it my personal goal in life. It's going to be my personal quest to make sure that we have this damn thing. And that's really what GTT is about. That's why I've been working on this for so long, and why I talk about this so much is it was my hope that these guys would, plus on top of that, I got to be honest, they're doing it the wrong way. And part of the reason why they're doing it the wrong way is they don't really care, right? If they really cared like I do and we do, they would have been dedicating their life to this and not been just hopping on the AI hype train, right? I've been teaching neural networks since 2007. That's 20 years I've been doing this shit. I actually care. And neural networks are not the right way to build these systems. Stochastic AI is something that's super useful, but not at the base. The base of those systems must be deterministic. They have to be. And the fact that they somehow have not figured this out is mind-boggling to me. Or maybe they have, and they're just not sharing it because they love the fact that the LLMs are a massive absorption device, because it validates their need to have these massive data centers, which is the core form of their revenue. And so they're going to actively do everything they can to shut down all the other alternatives, just like they did with the open source movement that happened in like the 1980s and the emergence of Linux operating system. But we have to do this. As far as I'm concerned, the signal is crystal clear. And I think part of the reason why this isn't front and center yet is that little red switch hasn't been fully triggered yet. You haven't yet had a massive Cambridge Analytica event. You haven't had a massive AI takeover where like an entire company gets owned by the AI, or somebody extremely wealthy, right? Like some billionaire needs to get owned by something super egregious. So this actually makes the headline, mostly because legacy media just talks about things that are hypey and sensational in the moment of today. They're not paying any attention, or they are, and they just choose to ignore it because they're being paid by big tech. But there's no attention to the true ramifications of where this is headed. And it's going to be heading there real fast because the technology essentially exists now. It's there. They have it. And we need to play catch up really fast. So, okay. I need to take a quick bio break, and then we're going to come back and maybe watch this one more time, and then I'm going to read through the massive comments that you guys have been making. I love that, by the way. I saw a few in here that are like really awesome, and I'm super excited. I realized I jumped in super late today and just a million things, but I'm super pumped that there's such a big turnout for this. Once I get done with this, I'm going to push this out to social, and I'll start trying to divvy up some clips, and any of the clips that talk about this, if you can help us distribute them. Right now, the core problem that I think we have, as Meredith is pointing out, is it's very quiet. In fact, even for me, I wasn't really aware that this is going on. And so the key thing that I think we need to do is make sure the people that do deeply care, they understand. Again, just like I didn't understand just 2 days ago, and now I understand that we need to act as if this has happened already, because we can't get to the point to where this has happened and there's no alternative. If we do that, we're screwed. We can't wait that long. We have to have the solution in place before the AIs get flipped on to do all of these egregiously bad things that we're talking about here and Meredith is pointing out. So then we can already be making the switch to this new system. And it's probably going to look like the LF system will be the base and the GDT system will be the AI stack. Like that's my speculation, is we'll leverage the existing open source that exists, especially from LF, and then we'll build out the AI part. And the good news is like some of this I've already built, right? So we know diff works and we know it's super fast and it's deterministic. That will work at least for code and probably for natural language pretty well. It doesn't work yet with like images or videos. So it's not going to be as multi-tenant as we want it to be, as multimodal. But once we start building enough momentum, then we'll get experts in those areas, right? Like I'm an expert more in ML related to software systems, computing systems, PL and SE, but I'm not an expert when it comes to image things. I'm also not an expert when it comes to natural language. Like I can pretend to be, because natural language and programming language have similarities, but we need experts from each of these domains to then make sure that we have those SLMs for that. And then once we start to cover all those domains, then what we have is a true viable alternative to things like GPT or Claude or whatever. DeepSeek. Yeah. Okay. So 2 minutes. I'll be right back and then we'll keep going. And thank you guys for showing up. It's building a lot of confidence with me knowing that all of you are there and I don't have to do this alone, because this is too much for, even though I'm wildly dedicated to this, we're going to need a team of people to build this out. And we're going to need people's discretionary time to make this work. Hold on one second. Claude is, I was telling you, it has this automatic pipelining system. When the stream ends, it literally just triggered this and said the stream ended. And so it's clearly there. No. Anybody that's worried about the AIs taking their job, you can just watch the lunacy of this persistent failure of supposedly the most advanced AI in the world. Although I think I'm only using Opus 4.8, so I'm not, this isn't Fable or Mythos or whatever the new thing that Japan just figured out, which I haven't looked at yet, but supposedly it's as good as Mythos. Okay, hold on, I need to stop doing anything. I'll show you this nonsense. So like, it's got this thing now where it even pretends to be me, right? It's like saying, I didn't write this. And then up here, it's like the stream just ended. Please run, right? This is the action to do. No, stop. Yeah, not all that super intelligent if it can't even write a simple watchdog system, right? Not the all-knowing, all-thinking thing. Okay, be right back. Okay. So let's watch this one more time, and then I'm going to go to the chat.
Can have profound applications, particularly that decides to implement an agent with these capacities is ultimately hollowing out the ability for Signal and others to guarantee privacy or data protection at the application layer. And this is a quiet but profound shift that we are witnessing.
Can you fight it?
Oh, I mean, I don't believe in inevitability, and I am willing to fight on my principles. I don't know if I can win it, but I will do everything I can because I think this is fundamental. I am concerned that we are seeing
We can
extremely
win it,
hasty
Meredith.
decisions made by very powerful actors. You know, we have
Yeah.
3 companies in the world with control over our core operating systems. That's Google with Android, Microsoft with Windows, and Apple with iOS, macOS. We all are relying on one or another of those, and they can make decisions by fiat that fundamentally harm our collective cybersecurity, that take away any choice we might have for privacy. What is the advice? I think healthy skepticism and a recognition that this technology is not magic. It can be extremely useful. It can have profound applications, particularly where finding patterns in large amounts of data is useful for XYZ. But it runs on hardware. It runs on software. When we talk about AI, we're not talking about a magical sky god that can suddenly solve all our problems, answer all our questions. We are talking about a statistical model that is then embedded in a hardware software system using software libraries, implementing choices on the user interface level that are made by people that are susceptible to vulnerabilities. These are not your friends. These are not conscious beings. These are not sentient interlocutors. Any one of the operating system vendors that decides to implement an agent with these capacities is ultimately hollowing out the ability for Signal and others to guarantee privacy or data protection at the application layer. And this is a quiet but profound.
Yes. It is quiet and it is profound. Sorry, I'm equally annoyed with Claude right now because it's not a super intelligence, I'll tell you that much. The part that we need to fix is the quiet part. She's absolutely right that it's profound and we need to make this significantly less quiet. And I'm a little stunned myself that I didn't piece this together sooner. I think that in order to fix this and get in front of it before really bad things happen, we need to, at least me personally, I'm going to start making this the primary thing that I'm working on. I almost have the GCC system built so it's sufficiently robust. It does a lot of the major things that I want it to do. You know, it has the polling, it has the full user directory system with our, check this out, we've already had over 1,000 people collectively in the live stream, just the live streams, in the last 2 weeks. I think that's pretty cool. That doesn't consider all of the other stuff, right? And I've got the right kind of metric system to track a lot of the things to help me stay on top of stuff. And also, one of the most important things is I have the full IDE for working on the code. And I'll work to build out some system that will handle the ML models directly inside of GCC. That part is super important. So anyway, we've got a lot of the stuff essentially that we need here. There's still some more to build, but we can start chipping away, I think, at the whole AI stack. And I have, at least at the highest level, a really good understanding of what that thing will look like. There's still some parts of it that I haven't fully figured out in terms of the confidence system. But as far as the deterministic and stochastic AI part, that part I think is pretty much in the bag as far as the invention portion. And some of the early engineering of it has already been knocked out. But we have to essentially, rebuild all this stuff such that it's significantly better than what was built at Merle. Merle, I think, was like maybe a test run of demonstrating what this could do as a kind of a science project to demonstrate its viability, that it can function at scale and behave deterministically and do all the cool things that I thought, at least in my head, it would be able to do. So we have that evidence now. And now we need to essentially rebuild it and develop and design it the right way, not sort of as a science project, but as a robust software system that is highly extensible, modularized, all the right stuff that the current mentor system does not have. Anyway, okay. So now let me, this is all, RJ, all of that stuff I was just looking at, this is all integrated into GitHub. I just haven't opened up the repos yet. Part of what one of the big questions that's at top of mind for me is I would like to do this in a way that big tech doesn't benefit from, but I don't know how to do that. I mean, one way to do that, if I'm being totally honest, is to GPL it, is put this all under GPL licenses, because then big tech won't touch it. And that's kind of the goal, is I don't want them to touch it. Because our goal here, in some sense, is to stop them from benefiting from this. And if we tag it with GPL licenses, they're not going to touch it because it would contaminate their entire system. And that's actually really good. So then what this does is this creates a distinct advantage for us in open source, while simultaneously not allowing them to benefit from that advantage. Or if they want to, then they can offer to pay us egregious amounts of money, which we'll just turn down. Because there's more at stake here than any amount of capital. We're talking about the future of technology and science here. At least that's kind of the way that I see it. And I can't be bought. Essentially, I don't really care about that. I care about science and technology more than any of this stuff. Like, what would I do with huge amounts of money? I would just still work and do this stuff. I don't want a yacht. I don't want to own a football team. All I want is to be able to work on extremely hard problems that are, really meaningful with a whole bunch of hyper intelligent people, and then march science forward. That is the thing that's the most meaningful to me, which is what GTT is. And many of the other things, it's what I do at Stanford. And this is not me just saying it. Like, this is like what I do. This is why I built Nautica. And yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at some of the comments here. Yeah. Absolutely. Linux stuff. Freddie is asking, I was trying to set up some environmental variables for Supabase, I think, and something in my vars failed. At attempt 3, Claude asked me to paste it into the terminal. I was like, dude, WTF. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Why? I'm having trouble clicking on this. Why? It's just you, Freddie. Why can't I not click on this? Maybe it's because it's a question. Let me see. I can't activate the heart for Freddie's question. I think maybe when you have questions, it does something strange with the mouse or something. Don't know, but please fix now. All right. Claude is on it. But yeah, so the Supabase stuff that's like a back-end system, right, that runs a lot of your apps in the back end for you. Am I remembering this correctly? I think someone was asking me recently how you might use something like Hostinger versus Supabase. And I think that the answer was Hostinger basically allows you to build up all of the back-end systems that Supabase essentially provides for you. And you might be able to use them together, but it's sort of like Supabase is maybe the iOS version, and Hostinger is more of the Android version. It's like more power. You can build the stuff, and you're not kind of like on the guardrails. Anyway, yeah, great comment. Hopefully at some point I'll be able to, maybe I can heart it here. I wonder if it has to do, yeah, I think it's just with the question. I'll give you give you hearts there. Okay. Yeah, eccentric, that's very much how I feel. Having this kind of central authority for any of this stuff it doesn't give me warm and fuzzies at all. Eccentric, are you from Canada? I'm just more asking out of personal curiosity. I don't think I'm familiar with this Bill C-22, but maybe I'll add this to my list of stuff to check out. Oh, I don't think I can copy this. Paradox is saying, I recently read or saw somewhere, can't verify, that iOS can bypass the EDE on things like Signal by capturing notification preview of incoming message. It could very well be that that's the case. The only thing I think I know for certain with Signal is the encryption is end-to-end. So everything in travel, you're guaranteed that it's going to be encrypted. But once it gets to the delivery point, I don't know the details of the level of encryption it has. So it could be that once it arrives, it's not encrypted. And then at that point, if iOS shows the message or can read it, it may be that it's unencrypted, and then bad things could potentially happen. Okay. Yeah, Microsoft is wild. Centralized systems are absolutely easy targets. And some strange stuff going on here. Okay. All right. Let's see where we are. Data sovereignty. Yeah. Matt, I'd love to hear more on what you're thinking here with the data sovereignty stuff. But I'm beginning to think that that's becoming a really core issue. And it's feeling to me like there are certain things that we're going to have to maybe take control of, because certain companies, I think, can't be trusted with these decisions, at least not with the behavior that they currently have demonstrated. It seems as though a lot of that is inspired by the rat race that's happening with AI, because it doesn't feel like it was this bad up until this whole AI craze started. And it's sort of like when the AI craze happened, everybody just started to lose their mind, at least in big tech. I mean, maybe they were like this the whole time and I just was oblivious to it, but I don't remember Google doing such insidious things. I mean, they were the company I thought that was like, do no evil or some nonsense. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of really smart people went to go work there, right? Like many of my friends worked there because I thought that that was a big part of their ethos. But it seems as though the climate today is not that anymore. And it feels almost like it's very reactionary initially toward OpenAI, potentially threatening Google's search, and now more focused on Anthropic and fighting them. But it's not great, at least from where I sit. It's not looking like they're I don't know, it doesn't feel like they're even really trying right now to even have the appearance of being ethical, right? Like, where's the apology for the forced download and the privacy intrusion that is? I mean, maybe it came out and I just missed it, but I didn't see anything. That's like one of the most egregious things I've seen. Okay. Elon is trying to eliminate the traditional operating system stack with macro hard. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, I heard about this macro hard thing, and I couldn't tell. I mean, obviously the name is a play on Microsoft, which I don't know. I feel like that's pretty boring and tired, but you know, if that makes Elon happy. By the way, Elon's probably not a super happy guy right now, given that there's a pretty massive fallout on the SpaceX stock. Whoa, sorry guys, my light just fell. Give me 1 second. Okay, back. Yeah, that kind of freaked me out for a second because the light fell and it was in my face. I was like, uh-oh, has Anthropic finally arrived, or Microsoft or OpenAI, and I'm finally being shut up personally? The day's arrived. It's going to happen on live stream. No, not yet. Thank goodness. Okay. What do you see, Matt, on LinkedIn? Is it the stuff about data sovereignty? I would really love to know, Echo, if this is a thing. If this is actually something that's kind of really being built out, or if it's just a whole bunch of chatter. I couldn't tell if when I saw this it was kind of a joke or if it was real. But if you find anything about it, if you want to drop that on the Discord, I would love a link or something to this so I can read up about it. I think Claude thinks that it's fixed the mouse issue. Let's go back and try to heart Freddie's comment. Or was Freddie's comment? Here it is. There we go. Okay, cool. Good job, Claude. All right, continuing. Let me make sure yeah, the biometric stuff and the Safe ID things, I can see an angle where this stuff is potentially increasing safety. But I can also see that the primary purpose of it is to essentially just benefit big tech. That it's a way to essentially block people from using their AI that they don't want to, like companies that are building competing systems, which again is hilarious to me because all of these large language model systems are built on the premise of data theft. I mean, where else is the data coming from? Like there's massive violations of copyrights on the data. That's like well understood. So while they're allowed to breach copyright left and right to train their systems, they would employ these to stop people from using them to just essentially do something similar. Kind of feels like the pot's calling the kettle black here. I don't love it. I don't like it one bit. Eccentric saying, I worry about data being used by the government itself. Orwellian. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. It's not great. It's not great at all. By the way, there's this movie that just came out. I want to go a little less hardcore for a second and talk about this. It's this movie, I think it's called Pressure. I'm trying to find it in my history here. And it's about D-Day, and it has to do with, pressure. So it came out in 2026, and Brendan Fraser is in it, and I don't know the name of this other guy, but strongly recommend you guys check this movie out. And a big reason why is the cosmologist in this is, I think he's almost a perfect representation of me in some cases, that I'm constantly sharing my opinions about things based on data and facts. And I will try to share these things to people that I think are acting in good faith, and I will be voted out of the room super fast because I'm saying things that doesn't necessarily jive with the outcome they've already decided that they want. So they've already basically made the conclusion about how this is going to go, and they only want to cherry pick the data that supports that conclusion. But it doesn't work like that in my world. Like, the data tells us what the answer is, and perverting the data to have it fulfill the answer that we already think we've arrived at is antithetical to science. And it drives me nuts when people do this, but it drives me like batshit crazy when scientists do this. And I know some scientists that do this, is they essentially use cherry-pick data to arrive at a conclusion that they want to have be true, and they ignore all the data that conflicts with it. It's completely lacking all scientific integrity. And if you watch this movie, you'll see that there's many cases where he's basically saying, look, I'm just going to tell you the truth of what I see, but it doesn't matter because you guys are so already decided on how this will play out that you're completely ignoring reason here, because it's not what you want to hear. You want to hear a specific answer, and you're not going to get that from me. I'm going to stand firm on this, no matter how unpopular this opinion is, because my opinion is coming based on scientific evidence, where your other opinions that align with the answer you want are just hocus pocus, cherry-picked nonsense. And I'm not going to subscribe to that. No matter what, no matter how much you bully me, no matter how much you try to manipulate me with money or anything like that, I'm just going to keep telling you straight up what I really think. This type of thing has happened to me so many times, and it really drives me nuts. It's literally the story of my life over the last 4 years, when I was trying to share with a lot of VCs, other startup founders, about the dangers of language models. Like, they were not hearing it. And it was crazy too, because I would expect that from VCs that may not want to hear the truth. But when I started hearing it from PhDs, people that should know better and should be able to think in a more reasonable way, That part was really surprising to me. So, Pressure, check it out. This is like, in my mind, it is a masterclass movie, especially if you want to understand me even better. Like, I'm essentially this guy here. And hopefully I'm not that curmudgeon, but when you get to like the second half of the movie, I think you start to really understand who he is. He's a little bit abrasive, I think, at the beginning, but yeah. Supposedly he is the primary reason why D-Day went the way that it did, and one of the main reasons why the Allies won World War II is like hugely critical because of this one dude and his ability to follow science and have his own personal views of that be completely removed from the situation. And he makes like two fundamental decisions in this that literally change the entire landscape of the war. And what's awesome about it is those two decisions are completely contradictory of one another, because he doesn't care about the actual decision. He cares about what the data says. And if the data says that there are two things that happen in sequence and they're contradictions of each other, that's what the data says. Anyway, you got to check it out. It's, at least for me, it's, yeah, maybe I'll watch it after this live stream as I continue to work. Okay. By the way, did we get is this guy still? So I watched Project Hail Mary as well, and I absolutely love this too. I loved both of these, and for different reasons. Okay, these are two questions, but I somehow can't. Yeah, it's still something. Yeah. No, RJ. I don't know what we might have been talking about here, but yeah, absolutely. I do know that in many of the cars today, that there are essentially these safety features, if you want to call them that, where they can remote control your car and basically have it function as a kill switch. Like wherever you are, if they decide that, nah, actually, you shouldn't be able to drive anymore, and just flip it and your car just sort of turns off. Pretty intense. Okay. Who's influencing things like the SEC and these other guys? Yeah, I don't know. But I would like to know. So maybe you can inform us, Matt, and share your knowledge on Discord. Yeah, it's going to be very much like that, RJ. Building our own Fable thing, except minus all the hype, and done in a responsible way so that it doesn't destroy the world with the compute that it requires. Essentially saying the big banks purchase the politicians to make sure they have forever control of currency manipulation. That's a huge problem and related to this. Yeah. Yeah, the stuff that's going on with governments just in general these days are, yeah, it's like, I think there's always been corruption in governments. That's pretty hard to stamp out entirely, but it feels like, at least where things are today, there's sort of this unprecedented level that seems to be happening in a bunch of different places simultaneously. And some of them are working directly with the tech companies to ensure specific outcomes that, oh, whoops, sorry, IG. I forgot to put this on the screen here. Let me move this over. I also want to share, just in a moment of pure playfulness, the you guys have to share what you think about this, but the movie Mortal Kombat 2 came out, and I hadn't even seen the first Mortal Kombat, I'll be honest. But for some reason, I was like, what the hell? Let's watch this stupidity, because, I played the video game, and I love video games, and I don't know, maybe I just wasn't, maybe I was fried or something. And I got to tell you, I was really surprised at not only how good Mortal Kombat 2 was, but also how good Mortal Kombat the original was. So I watched Mortal Kombat 2, and then I was like, wait a second, like, I think there's backstory here. And then I found, like, oh yeah, there's the original. I should watch this, because I didn't realize, I thought it was sort of a standalone, even though, I know it's a sequel. You know how many of the sequels are kind of like in their own thing, and you don't really need to watch the original. But they were making hints to things that happened previously or something that I didn't know what they were. So then I went back and I bought This is like a couple weeks ago. I was sick. I think I had the flu. And so I was just laying in bed feeling terrible. And I was like, I should at least do something fun. So this is what I did, is I watched, I did a double feature of Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2. It was a good time. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, we're going down. By the way, drop any other movies. I'm serious. Please drop the names of movies that you think I would like that I haven't seen. I would love to know what those are, because I think, as you guys know, if you've seen, I think I posted this on Threads. I have like my two major screens here, and then I have this other huge one back here that's constantly playing stuff, and it's just muted. And so I just like to have, again, I'm wired in kind of a strange way, but I like to have 15 forms of input that I can mute something and turn this one on. And that's kind of the way that I watch things. So there's usually something constantly playing in the background, and it's just muted. And then if something interesting happens, then I'm like, wait a second, and I unmute it. And then that's how I actually decide what to watch. So it's like what I find on Netflix or YouTube or whatever. I don't actually ever really sit down. And again, I'm not wired the right way. I don't. Do you guys do this? Is this something that you do? So for example, if I get a movie, I won't watch the movie, even with Mortal Kombat 2 or Pressure or Project Hail Mary. What I'll do is I'll rent it or something, and then I'll start playing it, but it'll be muted. And then I'll just keep working. And then something interesting will happen, or it won't. If nothing interesting happens, I never watch it. It just plays, and then I never go back to it. But usually what happens is something interesting happens, and then I pause work, and then I look up and I unmute it, and I watch for like 1 to 5 minutes. Again, not wired the right way. I'm just telling you how I do this. This is how I am able to know about these random things, but I still work like 16 hours a day. Somehow it feels fun to me, right? Because then once in a while I'll get really frustrated with work. Either I have to deal with something that's a pain in the ass, or the AIs are just being super stupid today, and I need a break. And at that point, I'll pause this and I'll watch. And then after I watch something for like 10, 15 minutes, I'll regain my sanity, and then I'll go back to work. Anyway, along those lines, if you know of any movies or shows or anything that's on any of the main streaming things, please drop that in the chat or on Discord or DM me, whatever. I never have enough of good things, and I'll watch anything. I generally don't watch stuff that's like super graphic violence or super graphic nudity, just because I find both of those things, when they're done in extreme ways, to be kind of boring. But I'll basically watch anything. I think some of my favorites are things like sci-fi, fantasy, westerns, and anything that's super cerebral. Like if there's something that is really intellectually interesting, I don't care if it's the most boring movie that's ever been made. I'll still probably watch it just because of it kind of inspires me to think about things in a different way, which is very much like how pressure is I if I'm just being totally honest, I'm not a student of World War II, and I don't actively seek to know that much about it. That's not what drew me to it. What drew me to it is I had heard that it gets into some really interesting, deep topics, and I saw something about scientists. And so I was like, okay, I like scientists. Anyway, okay, back to reading the comments. Sorry, I'm off on 200 different directions tonight. Yeah, Matt, I want to talk about this token thing for a second. By the way, Matt, are you still around, bro? Holler. Okay, Matt, looks like you are still around. All right, this token thing, here's what I really think about this token bullshit. This is an invented currency to bleed us of money in a completely abstracted way that big tech can control wholly. That's what I really think about this token nonsense. Let me say it one more time. I think tokens are an invented form of currency that big tech has complete control over, and it's done in a way that is so abstract that nobody knows exactly what it means. All they know is the claim that all these tokens are being used, and those tokens are basically money that you're giving to them. And that's great for them because there's no transparency, right? I much, much prefer the AWS model where you are paying for usage. I much prefer the GitHub model where you're paying for usage and you know exactly what that usage is. This token thing it doesn't mean anything. I mean, not really. It's a pretend thing that they can say, oh, yeah, well, we did a whole bunch of work and you burned through 1 million tokens, so you got to pay us a whole bunch of money. What's the explanation of that? What does that mean? How are the tokens used? These are all questions that should be addressable and answered. But to do that would actually show you what's really going on, and they don't want to do that because then you could hold them accountable to misrepresentation of the actual tokens that are being used. So when we build this AI stack, F this token thing. I'm gonna personally oversee that it's built in a way that there's no such thing as any. I mean, it's first of all, it's going to be totally free, but I'm going to design it in a way that there are no tokens. There's no hint of this token thing, so that if people try to fork it and use it in that way, they're going to have to build themselves an entire token thing. And what I might do is build into the AI that if people try to use it in that capacity, so they can monetize on tokens, that it like self-destructs or something. Because that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is the opposite of that. It's to enable all people to have AIs that they can use, not so it can be perverted in a way that makes a whole bunch of people a ridiculous amount of money, and they can ride basically off of our coattails. Like especially if it's big tech, there's no way I'm gonna actively build in fail safes and watchdog systems that prevent that. Yeah, and I know how to build some of these things. It's actually not that hard, and I can build them. We can be as clever as big tech. We can build these things so they're completely invisible. Like, they think that they're doing stuff that's super advanced and whatever. They haven't seen anything yet. Like, we're going to come in and take this from them. or at least over my dead body kind of thing. Hey, Sarah, it's good to see you. I don't know if you're still on, but oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, oh, you know what it is? I resized this. I rebuilt, Claude and I rewrote the entire mouse driver system inside of GTT to make it work better. And I just resized it, and it's struggling with the geometry of it. Yeah. Okay, cool. It's working again. Sarah, thank you so much for the kind words. Just being included in a positive statement with me and Meredith together, you just like literally made my whole month. I have like, every time I hear Meredith talk, my confidence and support of her increases. I think that Meredith is one of the most authentic, intelligent, technical leaders that exists in the world today. I don't know where she came from. I don't know anything about her background. All I know is she's doing this Signal thing, which I'm using daily. It's, again, it's the primary driver for all of my private communications. And I love the ethos that she is pushing forward. Like, I think she's making the world better every day that she's around. So if you don't know who Meredith is, Meredith Whitaker, strongly recommend you check her out. She's so awesome. What we should do is just put her name over here and have her show up over here. Yeah, again, I know nothing about her. I didn't know this. I think it's super interesting that she was at Google for 13 years and that she founded this Google's open research group. I mean, it kind of makes sense. We need more Merediths in the world. So yeah, Sarah, thanks so much. That's a really kind thing to say. I love that. I missed something that Matt was saying. That's why I'm not too worried about the big tech. It'll collapse under the weight of itself. I think compared to a democratized access, but the money systems are still framed as too complex or complicated. I'm not totally sure what you're saying, Matt, but I mean, I get the surface level, but maybe you can explain a little bit more, especially with what you're thinking about the money systems here. And I'm not sure about big tech collapsing under the weight of itself, unfortunately. Yeah, this is my concern. So eccentric, I don't know that I've never seen you before, but man, you're on fire, brother or sister. So eccentric, if you're not on our Discord, man, you need to get on it. But this is very much how I feel about this. A lot of people, I think, get very confused about this and think that wealth is the primary thing, that it's the primary thing to control, to have the largest amount of power in the world. I don't believe that. What I actually think is control and influence are the most important dimensions of power. Because with control and influence, you can manipulate the other levers very easily. But if you just have money, money will get you somewhere, right? But money doesn't buy you loyalty. Money will buy you access to resources. But if you have strong influence, influence will get you loyalty and unwavering loyalty. And through that loyalty, the world's your oyster. Like that's the key thing. And having that kind of influence, in my mind, is far more important than money. And it kind of makes sense if you think that, like, this is why politicians wield so much power is they themselves don't need to be super wealthy, but they have influence to control things like legislation. And because of that, people will come to them with egregious amounts of money to drive that. And some politicians will subscribe to this manipulation and some won't. Right? So when big tech or others have the ability to manipulate laws, that is a far bigger concern to me than money. And if you have people that are hyper ethical, that are not greedy, that money will only get you so far. But in today's current climate, where it seems as though a lot of people in government are easily manipulated by greed, then having money right now is a quick way to have control. But I don't suspect that that will remain active in perpetuity. I think that it's my hope anyway, that that is simply a byproduct of the current political environment. And as things evolve, as they always do, then the ability to manipulate people based on their greed will decrease, because we'll start to work on stamping out corruption. And how do I make this go into like dark mode? I could have sworn I did this. There's like a button here or something, right? Am I just missing this? How? Yes, how? Appearance menu. Did you guys see an appearance menu? Maybe it's too narrow? That's my problem. Okay. Back to small. Okay, let's keep going with our comments here. Yeah, me too. That's the key. By the way, I want to mention something to you guys. There's something that happened today, which I think is kind of interesting. Marketing firm reached out to me, and it seems as though, what is it, Moonshot AI, the guys that created Kimmy, want me to create a full-length VOD, 10 minutes or so, that discusses the weaknesses and strengths of Kimmy. And specifically to have me talk about it on GTT. And I want to say that I'm well aware that Moonshot AI is from China, and therefore Kimmy is. And I'm perplexed about this because, one, I think Kimmy is open source. And two, I've said that I have serious concerns with Chinese open source models, and that you shouldn't use them. This is my take. Unless it's a fully sandboxed environment, because I don't know that I trust what their long game is, based on evidence that we've seen historically from potential nation state actors doing bad things in open source, like China's goal of trying to shut down open source and then not being able to do that. So now playing in this open source space. So one of the thoughts, so I didn't reject it outright. What I told them, and check this out, this is what I told them. I said that if Moonshot AI is willing to give me 100% creative control, I'll consider this. But that means they have zero input on anything in the VOD. I can say that recording could be entirely bad, and I can just spend 10 minutes basically talking about how bad Kimmy is and why you shouldn't use it. Or I might find that maybe it isn't super bad. Oh, okay. Sorry about that, guys. Give me a second. Hello? Spotify has decided to take over the computer. It was playing on my phone, and then I guess it just decided it had enough of that and wanted to be front and center. Anyway, so I basically told them that if Moonshot AI will agree to giving me full creative control, and I said specifically that I will talk about the pros and the cons of Kimmy, then I'll consider this. And we'll see. Now, just to be clear, I said I would consider it. I didn't say that I'll do it because I'm a little bit conflicted here. And on one hand, I've made it clear that I don't want to promote Chinese models for the fear that their long game could be mass infection of some crazy long game strategy that they don't make active for some period of time. And I don't know that we'll have any idea about that until that event arrives, much like what they did with the XE-utils library. I mean, supposedly we don't know that it was China that did that, except kind of feels like we know. Or at least basically the evidence that those of us that have studied this exploit deeply seems to be converging on. So I think maybe we do know. So that's the one hand, and that's why I wouldn't do it, because it's sort of like this is the antithesis of what I stand for. But there's another side to this, and that is the side of awareness that I know some of you are already using Kimmy and Gwen, and is it Gwen? And DeepSeek. And you're going to use that regardless of what I say. So if I completely ignore it and I don't give it any attention, you may be less informed about its strengths and weaknesses than if I actually did a VOD on it and did a deep dive and then explained exactly how I think you should use these models in a sandboxed way, which is how I would recommend they're used if you do use them. So anyway, I'd love to hear your feedback on this. It's sort of like when Hugging Face reached out and asked me to do a VOD on Hugging Face to talk about the good and the bad. And this happened like right after I got done saying that Hugging Face is in some ways responsible for the models and their kind of badness because they're making them available and there's no way to deeply scrutinize their safety. That doesn't exist. And until that exists, it's basically they're rolling the dice with our safety. But alternatively, I don't know that there's much of an option for them. They could either not host the models at all and then somebody else would host it, or they could host it and then just try to react. I mean, so I try to look at it from their perspective, and they are in a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. It's like a catch-22 or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of how I feel about this Kimmy thing. Anyway, if you have thoughts on this, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. That I haven't made a decision on it, but now that they've reached out specifically and asked me to do a video on it, yeah, we'll see. All right, more comments. Yeah, 100%, Matt. It's all peddling influence and other forms of capital. It doesn't just equal monetary or fiat, 100%. It's that influence part that I think is the real, the control we are fighting and have been fighting has been lost. Yes, currently, I agree with this. They're rolling it as we speak. That we 100% RJ. I think that they have kind of taken control. And right now, we do not have it. We have some part of it, at least for Linux, but we don't have it, I think, at all in the AI. Not really. I mean, there are open source models, but none of the ones that I looked at in the Substack article were, so you have DeepSeek Coder, right? And you have Gwen. I think that's also China. You do have IBM's Granite model. I think this is probably the thing that comes closest. I think this is the one that I currently think is the best to use for SLMs today for code. And then you also have this Intel. And the reason why the IBM thing is, one, it's under a super permissive license, and two, I know how it was trained. I know the details of all of their training, and it's quite good the way they did this. But this is still predicated on IBM's willingness to maintain this, that we need to have a Linux-like entity that's building these, that's not controlled by big tech. At least that's my opinion. And right now, I don't see that. I think that that's what we have to build on GTT. And if you're aware of any that do exist, that we can use, that are completely from the open source community, they're not created or controlled by big tech or by big tech in the US or non-US, let me know. I'd love to know what that is. Okay. Passive device fingerprinting. What is this? Your phone or vehicle infotainment system constantly broadcasts a unique hardware. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, this could be, there's actual, I think, real danger in this thing that you're talking about, RJ. Because once you can have essentially a unique fingerprint for your hardware, it tells you not just about the hardware, it gives you implications about the user, especially if it's a somewhat secured device that is sending you information about the location and the activity, which I think a lot of them are doing. That's also not super great. And that falls principally under I think where this gets maybe the most it has the most potential for misuse in mobile devices. I think it's less interesting and powerful on fixed location devices like people's PCs, because those are just, it doesn't tell you too much about the user's activity. But once it's a phone or it's a tablet or even a laptop, that has the potential to be moved around. And when that moving around happened, it tells you more than just the things that are happening on the device. It tells you about the behaviors of the individual, like what time they go out of the house, where they go, what it tells you about their behavioral patterns. And depending on how precise the GPS signal is, because I think GPS is only precise, or at least traditional GPS is something like only precise down to maybe, I don't know, what is it, like 20 feet or something, which is super precise, right? But if you can get it down to like 1 foot, then you can start tracking people and their movement even within the location that they're at. So you can tell when they're moving from room to room, this type of thing. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff that can be lifted and potentially manipulated. Yeah. Oh, okay. Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. You won't even be able to change the battery of your car. It's getting better, super bad, super fast. That's awesome, RJ. It's getting super bad, super fast. Yeah. The problem is the normies won't be able to find the open source stuff because, like, wasting money in a vending machine. They'll go to the path of least resistance. Yeah, I agree with this, eccentric. And the way to get beyond this, I think, is the signal for the open source has to be so significant and so overwhelmingly positive that it's impossible to ignore. Then I think the script flips and there's a massive plot change. And an example of that is, so if you're talking about like true normies where they don't really have any background in technology, that's a really hard group to penetrate because they're just going to kind of do what they're told, right? They're just going to do the normal, I just use Apple stuff, or I just use Windows, and I don't know or care about all the dangers and things, right? And even Linux, I don't think, has necessarily penetrated that. Although I will say that Android has, and as many of us know, Android is a dialect in some sense of Linux, right? The difference, though, is Android, I think the Android company, if I remember the history correctly, was acquired by Google, and so it's no longer sort of in this open space. So I don't know exactly how to overcome this problem, eccentric, but I believe that it can be. I just don't know exactly how we can do it. And maybe historically we haven't done it yet, but actually I take that back. We kind of have with Signal. I mean, Signal isn't, I don't know that Signal is open source, but Signal is a non-profit company. And a lot of people have awareness of Signal. And I think that's an example of what I mean, is the signal for Signal is so strong. And again, am I really hitting the normies here? Probably not. You're probably still right that normal people don't really know about Signal, but I think we're almost there. And that's because I think that app or that calling Signal an application is like massively underselling what it really is. It's a platform and it's an entire collection of systems that work across the whole ecosystem. But anyway, that app or that platform is starting to, I think, be known well enough to where I think it demonstrates, at least to me, that it sort of can be done if the thing that you're building is powerful enough and useful enough. Yeah. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong here. And yes, I think that that comment about electricity, this is like totally on point here. I think it's kind of hilarious. Is back before electricity, I think there was this massive concern about how it was going to take all these jobs and put all these companies out of business. And in some sense, it kind of did, but it moved everybody forward. Because you don't have things like candles tipping over and burning the whole house down at night, or fireplaces getting out of control. And like, it's unheard of for us to do things with fire as a light source inside of a house these days. In fact, I think there's many laws that forbid this. And that's only possible with the ubiquity of electricity, at least in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that AI has the same potential to become that ubiquitous, but as long as it's done the right way. Like, if you use this electricity example, it's almost like, imagine if electricity came only from Google, Microsoft, and Apple. That would be crazy. That I think when you reach a certain level of prominence of a thing, you have to make it available in a way that is, it has to be regulated in some capacity, because you can't trust the companies in a holistic way to be good actors. At least I don't think that you can. And I know that you do have companies like PG&E and stuff that are, controlling electricity, but to the best of my knowledge, they have a lot of government oversight, which is kind of keeping them honest. Same thing with all the major power companies. A similar thing happens with financial institutes. They also have lots of oversight to make sure that they don't go off the rails, and they still don't have power supreme, right? Like they're controlled in some ways by the Fed and the default interest rates that the Fed is setting. So these things I think that we're going to have for AI, because I do think that AI is going to become so ubiquitous and so powerful that if you don't have that, it would go totally sideways. Essentially, if left in the complete hands of big tech corruption. And of course, they absolutely do not want that, right? They're going out of their way to fight that every possible. They all got all the lobbyists in the government, and yeah. But my hope is that they're going to lose that battle. If they don't, we're screwed. Yeah. Even if we build this SLM system. I want to get multiple systems like framework, laptop for Linux, Ubuntu, keep a MacBook as well. But I use Linux kernel and security, Lima, Kali, etc. for other things in Mac. Okay. I'm scared to go all in on Linux. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. As I have Linux stuff hanging out and working, but some of the stuff that I want to do, especially kind of being a video game nerd, like I really like to have Steam running. But the good news is now that you have the Steam Deck that runs on Linux, I'm starting to get some, like as strange as it is to say this, as this may sound, is the primary thing that's keeping me from switching fully to Linux is really just the ability to support video games. That's actually the only thing that's keeping me from fully diving in. Everything else I can do there. Like actually doing software development, AI development is in some ways significantly easier because I don't drink the Kool-Aid from VS Code or Visual Studio Enterprise or any of that. Like as long as I have a text editor, I can build stuff. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they are buried in with this because they made the mistake of buying into all the proprietary systems, and it's vendor lock. It's basically the same thing that you get with cloud vendor lock, except it's local. And I've tried to guide people to like not do this, but they become so infatuated with like a debugger that then they can't somehow think without the debugger. It's very strange to me. And I don't mean that as a knock. I just don't understand how you can't critically think well enough or build in the type of debugger behavior on your own that would allow you the freedom of working in any kind of development environment. Anyway, okay, Eccentric, yeah, it was great having you, man. And I have no idea who you are. This is the first time I've seen you, but definitely come back often. Daemons are watchdogs. Same for Windows, right? Yeah, essentially. At least that's the way that I think about it. Is the daemons are just, or at least the way I use them, is they tend to be these watchdog processes that help you guide the right behavior of the system. So either it's a service essentially that's doing the things that you need it to do, or it's ensuring that certain things are happening the right way, like security analysis or health of your hard drive, stuff that you essentially want running at all times. Sniffing the sockets and the ports to make sure you're not infiltrated, all that. No runaway processes that are writing to your hard drive and takes over all of the hard drive space, that kind of stuff. Okay, if I want a bleak movie. Oh, wait, hold on. Watching a movie called Aniara. Okay. Basically the same premise, like going on a 3-week space cruise. Ooh. Oh, I just watched this movie. I think I was mentioning it in the last live stream. I want to mention it one more time. Yeah. This movie here, Per Aspera ad Strata. It's on Netflix. Strong recommendation. It starts off and it's a little bit goofy and silly. It maybe looks like it's just going to be kind of like, what is that movie? It was this mockery of Star Wars, space something. I can't remember. But anyway, this movie looks like it's sort of just going to be playful and goofy and stuff from the beginning. And it does this goofy stuff, I think, pretty well. But it has this really interesting sort of bouncing as they go through different elements of the story, where it goes from being super, super playful to actually being extremely serious and pretty cerebral. Like, it's actually, at least for me, it's pretty heartwarming story and really well done. So strongly recommend you guys check that out as well. Requiem of a Dream. I think I've seen this or pieces of it, but this dread spiral thing, I'm not sure. Yeah, the Terminator stuff is like it's so hitting home right now, but in a very strange way, right? Okay, guys, I think we've wow, man, I love that you guys are so active on the chat. This is fantastic. Let me maybe take one more comment and then I think I'll call it a night. But I want to look at forced disgrace thing here about Hugging Face. Do you think the dangers are more around uncensored models, or is it a systemic root cause concern? So the problem that I see with Hugging Face is, and this is just a general problem that I see with AI models that exist today, there's no real way to do security analysis on any of the neural network models. And because they're not logical systems, we don't have the ability to look at their composition in a logical way to dissect their behavior. And while that remains, it's sort of a crapshoot on what does it do or what is it going to do with various inputs. We kind of just don't know. How you would build a security system for this is really confusing to me, because you wouldn't be able to follow the historical techniques that we've done for traditional deterministic software systems that are operation based. And operation based, I mean that they're based on an execution of operations that happen over a period of time in sequence. That's very easy to, or maybe not very easy, but it's easy enough to analyze because you can reason about the steps of operations to try to understand if it's potentially harmful. Because neural networks are purely numeric in structure, those numbers don't really mean anything. And because they lack any logical component, you can't reason about the validity and the safety of the logic. Now, you can do analysis of the peripheral systems around that. Like, for example, you could, if you have diff's models are interpretable. Like, you can actually go into the diff model itself and identify if it's making the right decisions, because you can debug the model. The models are debuggable. They're human readable. It's not that way with neural networks. And because it's not that way, I don't know how we build a security system for it. And I know that people are working on this, but I just haven't seen any evidence yet that this is solved, partially solved, anything that's like reliable. So what we're left with is a really powerful thing that will do powerful things, but there's no guarantee that it won't go rogue and do bad stuff in the process. That part is just up to us to cross our fingers. So with Hugging Face, the problem that I see for them is they host these models, and that's great to get a central location for the models so we can get access to them. But there's no verification of their safety. Where if you look at something like GitHub, where you have traditional source code, also software, but that functions in a space of operational code rather than just pure numerics, you can do security analysis on that. Like, it's well understood how to check to see if something is malicious. That's actually how they find a lot of these extensions that do bad things. But the only way, like, they can just look at the operations and say, whoa, that's malware. And right now with neural networks, there's nothing that does that. Like, the way that we figure out that it's bad is principally on the notion of people report that it has bad behavior because they've experienced it. And then they send that logged information in. And from that, we make the determination that it's not safe. That's a pretty lousy way to do security, because you basically need the people to come forward and say, oh yeah, this wiped my entire hard drive. And then somebody sandboxes it, and then they try to reproduce that, and then they realize, oh yeah, it actually does that. And then they block it. That's not a great mechanism. So that's basically the issue that I see. And I don't necessarily fault Hugging Face for this, because it's not really, they didn't create this, but it's based a lot under the premise of implied trust. That you're starting with the notion that trust exists and then go from there. And with all of the bad stuff that's going on, I think that it should be the opposite. You should be starting in a space where there isn't trust, and trust is demonstrated. And after it's demonstrated, then you begin to allow it use. Now, there's many ways to do that. That's separate from the models themselves. It would be something like you have an incubation time that they want to join, and you let them just sit there and ensure that the entity exists. You can't just like hop in, drop something, and then vanish. You have to sit there and let yourself be observed for some period of time. And then that builds essentially a traceable history. And from that traceable history, then you're allowed to deploy things. And if you did that, that would be a way to give us the trust. But the problem with that is it's going to slow forward progress down significantly. And I think that, it's very much like how Apple works with their iOS stuff, right? Is the Apple App Store is notoriously known to be very slow on this. And part of that slowness is on purpose. They're intentionally making it slow so they can detect bad actors, because the bad actors, what that does is that puts the bad actors in a space of being visible and trackable for a prolonged period of time. And no hacker wants that, right? They want to basically drop the thing out and vanish into nothingness. But if you force them to exist and you do a full background check on their entity, where you scrutinize that, wait a second, this is a shell company, or wait a second, you just created this account and you haven't gone through any of the security stuff, there's no way we're going to post this, that's going to force this good actor thing. Now, Hugging Face could do this, and to the best of my knowledge, they don't. In fact, if this would have been done, you could have probably prevented the XC-Util's backdoor hack. And you would have prevented it because all you needed to do, this is like a crazy thing that I think a lot of people missed, the account that Jia Tan was using, where this person was then writing all this code for the XC encryption library, which is very advanced stuff, that GitHub account was created 6 months prior to that user starting to actually drop pull requests on the Linux kernel. That's crazy. Like, if you think about this for a second, just rabbit hole a little bit, what coder is going to come out of Never Never Land, not have a GitHub account? Like, no account, yet they're somehow an expert coder? That doesn't really exist these days, guys. Right? There's a vetting process. Because what were they doing for the last 20 years when they were becoming an expert? Not being part of Git? Like, who is not part of Git? I'm not even doing a lot of stuff on GitHub, and I've had my GitHub account for, 15 years, right? So all you need to do is just be able to track the history of these people, and then that would eliminate many of the potential bad actors. But it requires things to go slower. And with the AI propaganda hype machine, slowness is the enemy, because all this is about is just moving as fast as possible and breaking everything and just being ridiculously stupid, right? It just doesn't make any sense. And unfortunately, when the whole world is moving that way, there's pressure for them to be part of it. Yeah, and no disrespect, Sean, the reason why you're probably not on Git is, do you write code? Right? Like, are you making a pull request to the XC-Util's lib? To my knowledge, you don't necessarily have a coding background. So you not being on Git makes sense. But someone that is writing really advanced code for something like an encryption library and not having this, it's sort of like if you meet a savant programmer and it's like they're the superstar. How long have you been coding? Like 3 weeks. No way. That's just not real. That's pretend. So having background analysis for those types of things would likely increase security significantly. But in today's mad world, I don't know that that's going to happen unless it's forced, unless there's some sort of regulatory control that demands this. Some companies are doing it, like Apple. Like, I actually really have a lot of respect for Apple and its process, even though I know it pisses a lot of people off. It's a really good process, and it's part of the reason why you generally don't have these massive security concerns that show up all over places like Microsoft's marketplace. Is the iOS ecosystem is designed to be hyper secure, because they follow these practical mechanisms. It does make them a little bit slower, but it makes them significantly safer. Anyway, guys, this is amazing. Appreciate you hanging out with me for the last 2.5 hours. I'm going to pivot now to try to get the word out and push this on social. And if you can help us make sure that people are aware, in particular, about what Meredith is talking about, this new era of the operating system vendors and their integration with AI at that base level and the amount of damage that that could potentially cause, we need to minimally just make people aware. Because even for me, who's working in this space, I missed it. And if it weren't for Meredith, I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have dawned on me that this is a really important issue. So the more we get people to be aware of this, I think the better. Anyway, guys, you are awesome, and let's keep going and keep growing.